Tried to be responsible for one day. Just one. Not a week. Not a lifestyle. I'm not trying to rebrand. I just woke up and thought, today feels like a responsible day. That's a dangerous thought for someone like me, because every bad decision I've ever made started with confidence I didn't earn. I didn't even tell anyone I was doing it. That's how serious I was. I figured if I announced it, responsibility would hear about it and immediately cancel. I started small, because that's what responsible people do. I made the bed, and right away, I knew something was off. I don't make the bed, survive around it. Making the bed felt like putting a tuxedo on a beanbag chair. It looks impressive, but it doesn't change what's underneath. I stood there looking at it, waiting for someone to clap. Nobody did. That's another thing about responsibility. It's very lonely. No one celebrates it. You do something dumb, people gather. You do something right, everyone just assumes that's who you are now. Then I decided I'd handle errands like an adult. I didn't rush. I didn't procrastinate. I left the house calmly, which immediately worried my neighbors. I got in the car and turned the radio down so I could focus, which is something I've only seen adults do in movies when they're trying to find a parking spot. It wasn't even parking yet. I just wanted to feel prepared. That's when I realized I had no plan. Responsible people always have a plan. I had a feeling, and it was already fading. At the store, I tried to make eye contact with employees like I belonged there. I grabbed a cart, even though I only needed 3 things. That's a responsible move. Carts say I thought ahead. Baskets say I carry this until it hurts. I read labels. I compared prices. I stood there long enough that another shopper circled back like they were worried about me. I could feel myself becoming someone who says things like, in the long run, I hated it, but I kept going. I made the mistake of thinking, I've got this. That's when responsibility leaves. The moment you feel good about it, it's gone. I decided to do one more adult thing, just one. Something big. Something that would really lock the day in. I won't say what it was, but it involved paperwork, a phone call, and a number I did not recognize. I told myself, be calm. Ask questions. I asked one question and immediately regretted it because the answer had follow-up information. The person on the phone sounded relaxed. That should have been my first warning. Relaxed people have control. I was taking notes like I was studying for a test I didn't know I signed up for. I nodded the whole time, even though they couldn't see me. That's a respect nod. It says, I understand, when what it really means is, I hope this ends soon. At some point, they said, does that make sense? And I said yes, because that's what responsible people say right before everything falls apart. When I hung up, I sat there quietly, like something important had happened. I waited for the feeling of accomplishment. It didn't show up. Instead, I felt tired, not physically, just emotionally sore, like I'd been using muscles I don't normally acknowledge. I realized responsible people must be exhausted all the time. That's why they go to bed early. Not because they're boring, because they've been carrying the world correctly all day. By the afternoon, the pressure was intense. Every decision felt heavier. Do I answer that email now or later? What is later, really? Responsible people don't say later. They say now and mean it. I started missing my old self. The guy who'd see a problem and think, that's future me's issue. Future me was supposed to be more qualified. Turns out he's the same guy, just older and disappointed. I tried to relax, but even relaxing felt like a task. I couldn't just sit. I had to decompress. I couldn't snack. I had to fuel. I checked the time and thought, wow, it's only been a few hours. That's when I understood something important about responsibility. It doesn't stack. You don't do it once and get credit. It resets every morning like a cruel video game, and the tutorial never ends. By evening, I was bargaining with myself. I told myself I'd still count the day as responsible if I just didn't mess anything up too badly. That felt fair. I lowered the bar quietly, so responsibility wouldn't hear me. I started replaying moments, wondering if I'd said something wrong or missed something obvious, accidentally agreed to something that would show up again in 6 to 8 business days. Because that's when consequences like to arrive, when you've completely forgotten what you did, and you're finally relaxed enough to be surprised. I woke up that morning with a thought that should have been investigated immediately. I didn't question it. I didn't stretch first. I just accepted it as fact. The thought was, I think I can handle today. That's not something I've ever proven before, but it felt confident. Confidence is very convincing when you don't slow it down. I didn't say I was going to change my life. Would have been unrealistic. I said one day, one normal day, and already that felt generous on my part. There was no preparation for this decision, which should have been a clue. Responsible people usually ease into responsibility. Hi, they set reminders. I just stood up like I'd been promoted overnight. No training, no handbook, no supervisor. And they're smart. I didn't even look around to see if anyone else was doing it. I just assumed responsibility would recognize me when I showed up, like it would see my confidence and say, yeah, he looks like he belongs here. That's how I approach most things I don't understand. Arrive early and hope nobody asks questions. The confidence was quiet but firm. That's the dangerous kind. Loud confidence gets caught quickly. Quiet confidence slips through security. I brushed my teeth like someone who expected a productive outcome. I nodded at myself in the mirror, not in a motivational way, we'll figure it out way. That nod has gotten me into more trouble than any decision I've ever made. It's not approval, it's permission. I started imagining the version of me that had this under control. He was calmer. He moved slower. He didn't rush because rushing suggests mistakes, and mistakes suggest paperwork. This version of me had opinions on things like timing and priorities. I don't normally have those. I react. That's my system. But now I was choosing, and it felt official. Too official. The problem with confidence when you're unqualified is that it feels exactly like confidence when you are qualified. There's no warning sound, no pop-up that says, hey, just so you know, you're guessing. It just feels right. I wasn't anxious. That should have scared me. Anxiety usually shows up to keep me from speaking to people who know what they're doing. It was quiet that day. It had taken the morning off. I started stacking expectations on myself without realizing it. I thought, if I can do this one thing, maybe I can do the next thing correctly too. That's not how my life has worked historically, but confidence doesn't check history. It deletes it. I hadn't earned this feeling, but I was spending it aggressively. At some point, I caught myself thinking, this isn't even that hard. That sentence should come with an alarm. That's the sentence right before you agree to something that is steps. I could feel the day leaning forward. It was waiting for me to say one more confident thing so it could introduce consequences. I hadn't failed yet, which was new. Instead of slowing down, I trusted that feeling. I let it guide me. That's when confidence becomes management. Starts delegating decisions you don't understand. It tells you not to ask questions because questions might expose the fact that you're just standing there, hoping whatever comes next assumes you know what you're doing too. Once I committed to being responsible, I realized I couldn't jump straight into anything important. Responsible people don't start with the big stuff. They warm up, they ease into it like it's a physical activity. So I chose something safe, something simple, something no one would question if I did it slightly wrong. I decided to make the bed. That's not even a task to me. It's more of a suggestion. I usually acknowledge the bed and move on with my day. This time, I interacted with it. I pulled the sheets tight like I'd seen adults do in movies. Not confidently, but carefully, like the bed might respond. Step back to look at it because that felt like part of the process. Responsible people always step back. They assess. Didn't know what I was assessing, but I knew it mattered. The bed looked better than usual, which surprised me. That surprise immediately turned into pride, which was my first mistake. I stood there a second too long, waiting for the moment to be recognized. No one said anything. That's when I learned something important about responsibility. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't reward you. It just sits there, finished, expecting you to move on. I didn't like that. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted a quiet, nice job from the universe. Instead, the universe moved on like this was always my job, and I was late to it. That small task changed how I saw the rest of the day. Suddenly, everything felt like it should be handled with care. I didn't just grab my keys. I placed them. I didn't just walk out of the room. I turned off lights. Each move felt deliberate, like I was building a case that I belonged in this version of my life. The problem was every small win raised the expectation for the next moment. Responsibility stacks pressure, not points. Decided to take on another adult action just to see if the feeling would continue. I organized something. I won't say what. The object itself wasn't important. The act of organizing was. I grouped things. I made decisions about where they belonged. That's not something I normally do. I let things exist wherever they land. Now I was assigning them homes, which felt powerful and unsettling at the same time. While I was doing it, I kept checking my progress like someone might walk in and evaluate me. No one did, but I behaved like they might. I straightened things that were already straight. I adjusted items no one else would notice. I was performing responsibility, not just doing it. That's when I realized these small tasks weren't small anymore. They were milestones, proof that I was capable of handling more than I'd planned for. Each completed task made me feel slightly taller, slightly more prepared, and significantly more exposed. Because once you do something correctly, you're expected to repeat it. Go back, you can't pretend you didn't know how. That knowledge sticks. It waits, it watches. By the time I finished those early tasks, I was tired in a way that didn't make sense yet. Not physically, mentally. They're smart, like I'd been making decisions all morning without a break. And that's when it hit me. Responsible people aren't tired because they're busy. They're tired because they're aware. Every small action is a choice. Every choice is an opportunity to prove you know what you're doing. And once you start proving it, the day starts asking for more. As the day went on, I realized the hardest part of being responsible wasn't the tasks. It was the conversation happening in my head while I was doing them. There was a constant commentary, like I'd accidentally turned on a director's cut of my own life. Every move came with an internal meeting. I paused for even a second. My brain stepped in like, all right, let's talk about what we're doing here. I didn't invite that voice. It just showed up once I decided to care. Couldn't do anything quietly anymore. If I picked something up, immediately wondered if that was the correct thing to pick up first. If I put it down, I questioned the location. Not out loud, just enough to feel unsettled. That's the worst kind of doubt, because no one else can hear it. So you can't defend yourself. You just stand there, frozen, holding something meaningless, while your brain asks questions it doesn't need answered. What made it worse was how calm everything looked on the outside. If someone had walked by, they would have thought I was doing great. That's the problem. The outside didn't match the inside at all. Internally, I was negotiating with myself over decisions that used to take zero thought. I'd catch myself thinking, is this how I normally do this? And then realize I didn't know. I've never paid attention long enough to notice. I started narrating my actions mentally like that would help. Okay, now we're doing this. Who is we? When did this become a team project? It felt like my brain didn't trust me anymore and decided to supervise. Every time I thought I'd made the right call, the voice would pause and say, let's just remember this moment in case it comes up later. That's not encouragement, that's a threat. The strangest part was how responsibility turned simple choices into character judgments. It wasn't just, do I do this now or later? It became, what kind of person does it now? Suddenly I wasn't choosing actions, choosing identities. I didn't know I'd signed up for that. I just wanted to have a functional day. I didn't realize it came with a personality quiz. I'd make a decision, feel okay about it for a second, immediately replay it from every angle. Was that efficient? Was that necessary? Was that slightly worse than the other option I didn't take? That other option became very attractive the moment I ignored it. That's how my brain works. It roots for the path not chosen because it's undefeated. At some point I noticed I was nodding to myself again. That same nod from earlier, but now it wasn't confidence. It was reassurance, like I was trying to calm a nervous animal. It's fine, we're fine. That's not something you say when you are, in fact, fine. That's something you say when you've gone too far to stop, but not far enough to feel successful. I missed the version of me that didn't analyze everything. That guy made mistakes quickly and moved on. This version lingered. He reviewed. He imagined outcomes that hadn't happened yet and reacted emotionally to them anyway. Responsibility didn't make me better. It made me aware. And once you're aware, it's hard to unsee how many chances there are to get things wrong, especially when your own thoughts keep raising their hand, asking if you're sure about what you're doing next. Eventually, responsibility introduced me to other people. They're smart, and that's where things got uncomfortable. Because nothing tests your confidence like interacting with someone who clearly knows what they're doing. These weren't aggressive people. That would have been easier. They were calm. Calm is intimidating. Calm says, I've been here before. I don't trust anyone who isn't at least a little confused. The first interaction was simple. A question, a normal, everyday question that required a normal, everyday answer. I opened my mouth. My brain immediately started reviewing options like I was on a game show with no timer. The person waited patiently. That patience felt loud. I could feel it. Calm people don't rush you because they're not worried about what you'll say. They already know how this ends. I gave an answer that sounded confident enough to pass inspection. Not correct, just confident. There's a difference, and professionals can smell it. They nodded slowly, which I took as approval, but in hindsight might have been documentation. That nod felt like it went on my permanent record somewhere. Stood a little straighter after that, like I'd earned my place in the conversation, even though I hadn't learned anything new. Then they followed up. Professionals follow up. That's how they separate people who know things from people who got lucky. The follow-up question wasn't complicated, but it was specific. Specific questions are dangerous. Confidence doesn't survive specifics. I paused, which is when responsibility abandoned me and left me alone with my thoughts. I filled the silence with words that sounded organized, even to me. That's when I knew I was in trouble. The person didn't correct me. That's worse. Correction means there's still a chance to fix things. They just accepted what I said and moved forward, which told me I'd either done well or agreed to something I didn't understand. Yet, professionals move forward. They don't look back. That's where consequences lie. I noticed how relaxed they were. They leaned slightly. They breathed normally. I was standing there like I was being scanned. Every calm movement they made added pressure. Felt like I was borrowing their confidence without permission, and I was worried they'd ask for it back with interest. At one point, they explained something using words I recognized individually, but not as a group. I nodded again. That nod has really evolved throughout my life. This one meant, I hear sounds and I respect them. I told myself I'd sort it out later. Later is where all my problems go to wait. The conversation ended politely. That's how professionals end things. No drama, no warning. Just a clean exit. I walked away feeling like I'd passed a test I hadn't studied for, but also like I might get an email about it. Not today, just someday. That's how authority works. It doesn't chase you, it schedules you. After that, interaction felt heavier. I started seeing calm people everywhere. Clerks, employees, anyone wearing confidence like it was standard issue. I realized responsibility doesn't just ask you to do things. It puts you in rooms with people who expect you to already know how. And once they treat you like you do, you're not allowed to ask why they assumed that, which means every calm conversation becomes another quiet agreement you don't fully remember making. By the time the day reached its middle, responsibility stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like gravity. Didn't hit all at once. It settled in slowly. The way you don't notice you're tired until you sit down and everything suddenly hurts. I wasn't doing anything dramatic, no emergencies, no big decisions, and yet I felt weighed down, like I was carrying something invisible that kept getting heavier every time I acknowledged it. What surprised me most was how constant it was. Responsibility doesn't clock out. It doesn't say, good effort, take 5. It just stays nearby watching. Even when nothing needed to be done, it was there reminding me that something could need to be done at any moment. That awareness alone was exhausting. Realized most of my energy usually goes toward not noticing things. Now I was noticing everything. Simple moments felt loaded. Sitting down wasn't resting anymore. It was evaluating whether I'd earned it. Drinking water felt intentional, like I was hydrating with a purpose. Even breathing felt like something I should be doing correctly. I caught myself thinking, I'm being productive right now, which is a thought that has never helped anyone relax. The strangest part was how quiet the pressure was. No alarms, no deadlines screaming at me. Just a steady sense that I should be on top of things. Responsible people always seem calm on the outside, and now I understood why. All the chaos is internal. They're too busy managing an invisible checklist to panic outwardly. I wasn't panicking either. Every time I completed something, instead of relief, I felt expectation. Like the universe leaned in and said, "Okay, what's next?" That's when I realized responsibility doesn't reward you by easing up. Rewards you by trusting you with more. That's not a gift. That's an expansion of duties. I wanted to go back to doing one thing at a time without it becoming a statement about who I am. I tried distracting myself, but responsibility doesn't like distractions. It reframes them. Relaxing became recharging. Taking a break became strategic. There was no escape. Everything had a label now. Labels come with rules. I miss doing things poorly and accidentally. Those moments were lighter. Mistakes used to end the moment they happened. Now even success lingered. The fatigue wasn't physical, which made it harder to explain to myself. I hadn't moved much. I hadn't lifted anything heavy. But my mind felt like it had been holding a door open all day. Not slamming, not struggling, just holding. That constant effort adds up. And the worst part is you don't get to drop it suddenly. You have to wait until someone tells you it's okay, and no one ever does. I started wondering how people live like this daily, how they wake up and choose this weight over comfort. Then I realized they probably don't feel it anymore. They built strength around it. For them, this is normal. For me, it felt temporary and urgent. And they're smart, like I was borrowing someone else's life and needed to return it in good condition before they noticed something was off. And they're smart. As the day kept moving, I realized the most unsettling part wasn't anything that had actually happened. It was everything that hadn't happened yet. Responsibility has a way of planting seeds and walking away, trusting time to do the damage. Nothing exploded, no alarms went off, and that silence felt intentional, like the calm before a follow-up. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been scheduled without my full awareness. Every choice I made earlier started replaying in my head with a delayed echo, not loudly, just enough to remind me it existed. That's done. And my brain would respond, for now, that's not closure, that's a teaser. Responsible decisions don't end when you make them. They wait, they mature. They show up later with paperwork and a tone that suggests you should remember them clearly. I started noticing how often consequences arrive when you've completely relaxed. That's their favorite time. When you finally sit down, when you stop thinking about the day, when you believe you're finished. That's when an email appears with a subject line that assumes familiarity, no explanation, no context, just enough information to make you scroll back through your memory and realize you don't remember agreeing to anything. You definitely did. What bothered me most was how confident the future felt about me. Like it had expectations. It assumed I'd still be responsible later, that I'd follow through, that I'd remember details I'd barely processed. That version of me sounded organized. I didn't recognize him. I was worried I'd promised access to someone who doesn't exist consistently. I imagined a notification arriving days from now. Not urgent, polite. Those are the worst. Urgent ones feel fixable. Polite ones mean this has been normal for everyone else. I pictured myself reading it twice, then a third time slower, hoping clarity would appear between the lines. It never does. Clarity assumes preparation. The idea that consequences don't need reminders is unsettling. They don't chase you. They trust the system. They know where to find you. They arrive with dates and reference numbers, like they've been watching quietly while you moved on with your life. And the worst part is you can't even be mad at them Because technically they're right. You did this. You just don't remember the version of yourself who thought it was a good idea. I tried to convince myself that maybe nothing was coming. Maybe this time it really was over. But responsibility doesn't work that way. It's not dramatic, it's patient. Lets you forget just enough so that the reminder feels personal. Like a test you didn't know was cumulative. That's when I understood why responsible people keep calendars, notes, backups for their backups. They're not organized because they like it. They're organized because they've been surprised before. They know the future doesn't explain itself. It just shows up and waits for you to remember who you were when you thought you had everything under control. So after all that, I realized something very important. Responsibility is not a friend. It's more like a very polite stranger who quietly follows you around and waits for the exact moment you feel comfortable to remind you that nothing is actually under control. Went into the day thinking I could handle it, like one tiny adult skill would unlock the rest of life. Instead, I got a full tutorial in overthinking, quiet judgment, the slow accumulation of consequences I didn't even know I signed up for. By the end of it, I wasn't proud. I wasn't accomplished. I was just tired in a way I didn't expect. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that's exactly how responsibility works. It's not flashy. It doesn't clap for you. It just waits, watches, quietly makes sure you never get too comfortable. And yet, somewhere in the mess, there's a strange satisfaction in knowing that I survived the day. I didn't completely fail. I didn't cause chaos. I just learned in real time that being responsible isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up, making the attempt, and then realizing that the universe has its own sense of humor. And it's a little louder than mine. So maybe tomorrow I'll try again. Or maybe I'll just call it a day and let the bed stay a little messy. But either way, now know exactly what it feels like to walk into adulthood, realize you're not ready, somehow make it through without anyone noticing too badly,